Good evening and welcome to ITV News. This is Monday night's calendar.
Yes, hello, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Coming up on the programme tonight.
Lost Generation. We've a special report on claims that savage budget cuts to Yorkshire's youth services are helping to fuel an epidemic of knife crime on the county's streets.
I've known a couple of people that died due to stabbings, innit? But some people are scared, innit? They can't fight with their hands, innit? They use knives.
You might not like that person, you might want to hurt that person, but you're not just hurting them, you're hurting the whole family. And for what? To spend your next 20 years in jail?
We'll hear from those caught up in the deadly reality of knife crime, and we'll find out just how easy it is to buy weapons like a 40-inch samurai sword.
Also on the programme tonight. Emergency services in the firing line. Police, fire and ambulance staff say their lives are being put at risk by firework attacks like these.
In sport, living the FA Cup dream. Worksop Town, from the 7th tier of the football pyramid, reach round 1 for the first time in 22 years.
And talking of dreams, we join a group of incredible youngsters from across Yorkshire as they set off on the journey of a lifetime.
So first tonight, the mother of a Huddersfield man murdered in the street with a samurai sword has spoken out for the first time, saying budget cuts to youth services are helping to fuel a rise in knife crime.
Javel Morgan, who was unarmed, was stabbed 5 times, becoming yet another victim of violence between young men. And after £1 billion was cut from youth work budgets nationally, his mother Vicky told Calendar, what did the government expect? It's a view shared by many families, charities and other groups working in the sector who are calling for more support for what's been dubbed the lost generation. In the first of his special reports on the issue, Jonathan Brown looks at the knives on our streets.
Behind the barbed wire and boarded up windows, this is a West Yorkshire neighbourhood like many others. For young families, money is tight. But with support here thin on the ground, those willing to speak out say drug dealers and gangs are taking advantage, dragging their young neighbours into criminality.
Not many people get to have a childhood, innit? Not around here at least. When you don't really have nothing to do, no way to make money, it's the only way, innit? That's why it's dangerous, innit? But at the end of the day, if you've got a family to feed, you've got to feed them, innit?
Down an alleyway out of public view, this teenager agrees to talk to us on the condition we disguise his identity. The threat of knife crime in this part of Leeds, he says, means attracting attention in itself puts him at risk.
I've known a couple of people that died due to stabbings, innit? But some people are scared, innit? They can't fight with their hands, innit? They use knives.
How does that make you feel when these things happen and it's so close to home?
Obviously, they all got families, innit?
For others around here, the fear of violence has at times led them to arm themselves with knives. There have been 12 stabbings in this area in as many months.
And why did you feel like you needed to do that?
Because I had a lot of people that wanted to targeting me like they wanted me. I don't know why, for some reason.
Do you feel like people carry because they feel like they need to protect themselves?
Probably they got someone, they never know what could happen at any time. They carry just to, protect themselves, to be honest.
Javel Morgan, who lived in Leeds, was unarmed when he went to Manchester Carnival last August. But as this footage shows, when violence broke out, he was chased down by men wielding a samurai sword and stabbed 5 times. Jacob Doughty and Deontay Crossfield, both from Huddersfield where Javel grew up, were later jailed for his murder.
I will never forgive them for what they've done, ever. They might have hurt my son in that one split second, but me, his sisters, his dad, his family, you've hurt for a lifetime.
Vicky says her son was looking forward to a future as a bricklayer. But in the years prior, when many councils closed youth facilities in the wake of the financial crash, she says Javel and his peers were let down. In Kirklees alone, government austerity led the local authority to close all of its youth centres, in 2017.
This is the generation where all of the youth clubs got taken away, all the funding for things for kids and summer camps and all that were took away. What did the government really expect? These gang areas are deprived areas. Some children within them areas will not have much family support and then be looking on to these gangs as family. It's a full circle. Like, it's sad. More things need to be in place for these kids.
The calls and the requests for our support are regular, growing and quite intense.
Turning away organisations seeking youth support has become all too common for those running Yorkshire's oldest youth work charity. Its 17 outreach staff are sent into a handful of deprived communities every week, but demand is outstripping supply.
Between 2010 and 2015, a great chunk of youth services and therefore youth workers and youth service staff nationwide left the services. The sheer scale and size of those gaps in cities like Leeds, Sheffield, Hull, Bradford aren't fillable by small to medium-sized charities, number one. Number two, there isn't a workforce there large enough to cope with that kind of demand.
On the ground, its staff are trying.
You had a lad had his arm chopped off a couple of months ago.
I joined Jodie and Emily on a walkabout in Leeds where they strike up conversations with disengaged young people 3 nights a week.
I had a knife towards my neck and that Liminal was saying to me that, oh, don't move.
Among those they introduced me to is Sam, who says his experience of being robbed could have driven him to crime if it wasn't for the help he's had from youth workers.
That's when I fully changed. My mindset's different now. I'm just saying to myself that all of this street thing's not worth it. They made me realise that you got a different path to go to, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, you can do better.
Do you think we're doing enough?
Like, our organisation is doing as much as we can with the funding that we've got.
But as a society?
No, I think that we're letting them down a little bit. If you think of the last couple of years with the youth centres closing down through COVID, I can show you my work phone, the amount of messages I get because I've got common contacts with some of these lads that's out here, and I get offered drugs, I get offered everything that's inside there, and it's just like, how can these young people get away from that as well?
You don't have to try hard to find dangerous weapons either. While UK law restricts the carrying of knives in public, currently, if you can prove you're 18 or over, you can buy many online at the click of a button. So, we did. In the space of an hour, we legally ordered 5 from England-based retailers. Within a week, 4 had arrived, some instantly recognisable. After unpacking them in a safe and secure space, we invited West Yorkshire's Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime for an interview. She leads a project that funds schemes to reduce youth violence.
What is your reaction to seeing these?
Well, they're staggeringly frightening. I'm dismayed that you've been able to buy these online. Why are we having legislation to increase it to 21? We should ban these knives, these weapons of mass destruction.
Some people would say, obviously we've got a filleting knife there that's used in fishmongering, and then these items are advertised as bushcraft tools. So is it something that you kind of can't really solve in that sense?
You can't really solve it, but I think if you've got a filleting knife and you need it for your job, then you should be able to prove that. We don't have much bushcraft in Kirklees, where I live. This isn't the issue, it's part of the issue. We know that local government has been decimated since 2010 by billions, so no wonder youth services are not what they once were. We need support for vulnerable families, for families struggling, for families who are being exploited or potentially being exploited.
Do you think we've been letting young people down?
Absolutely, we've been letting young people down. They're frightened to leave their homes without a weapon to keep them safe. What does that say about us as a society?
Days after that conversation, perhaps the most shocking item we ordered finally arrived. The online retailer blaming a police investigation on the delay in delivering this 40-inch samurai sword, a knife similar to that took the life of Javel Morgan.
What is your message to young people who might be watching this, who carry knives themselves?
Just don't do it. You might not like that person. You might want to hurt that person, but you're not just hurting them. you're hurting the whole family. And for what? To spend your next 20 years in jail? Just don't do it, it's not worth it.
But on the streets of our towns and cities, those pleas continue to be ignored. The question on the lips of many of those trying to intervene is just how much more is society willing to do to prevent more young lives from being lost?
Well, that was Jonathan Brown reporting there, and Jonathan's in the studio with us now. Absolutely shocking story there, and some those weapons. I mean, my goodness, just people will be absolutely amazed that you can buy them so easily. What's it been like covering this story?
Well, this is obviously a really sensitive issue, and it's one that I've been speaking to these families and charities about for a number of months now. But what's come up in those conversations time and time again is that they believe that those cuts driven by austerity since 2010 have left vulnerable young people without safe spaces and the responsible adults that they've often relied upon over previous years. They say that that gap is being exploited by criminal gangs. Now, they've also told me that they believe that that part of the debate is often one that's left out. They say we hear far more about young people being the problem than we do about the amount of support that they've lost over recent years. Now, the government says that it's aiming to give every young person across the country access to clubs and activities by 2025, and that they're doing so by investing £500 million. They also say they're investing in violence reduction units to help young people escape crime. Now, we also spoke to Leeds City Council. They say that supporting young people remains a priority for them, while Kirklees Council said it's investing £1 million in youth services.
Thank you, Johnny. I think one of the most shocking images was seeing the knives and the one that arrived late. What has happened to those knives now?
Well, it's important to stress that those knives have been disposed of thanks to West Yorkshire Police. They have destroyed them for us, so there's no danger that they're going to end up in the wrong hands.
That's good to know. But this issue at the end of the day goes much further than this, doesn't it?
Absolutely. There are so many elements to this subject. I mean, one of the things that people have been telling me is that budget cuts over the years have been too deep and for far too long, and that throwing money at this problem simply won't solve this problem on its own. Now, they say that's because thousands of youth workers have left the profession over recent years, while there are far fewer people studying to replace them because university courses have been closing, while funding for charities is often short-term, which makes it difficult for them to plan. All the while, many families across our region are facing issues like county lines drug dealing. And tomorrow we'll hear from Kate Rue. Her 16-year-old son Ben was groomed by drug dealers and died in a hostel in 2020.
It feels like part of the perfect storm, that as you lose all the youth workers, there are also fewer mental health workers, fewer social workers. All of that support net just disappeared.
Yeah, and we'll see your next report on calendar tomorrow night at 6. Jonathan Brown, thank you.
Thank you very much. Certainly a lot of food for thought there. You're watching Calendar. Thanks for joining us. Still to come before 6:30. Up and away. We join a group of remarkable young children from Yorkshire as they get ready for the trip of a lifetime.
And after a cold, clear and frosty start to the week, it's all change from Wednesday onwards to cloudy, wet and windy. All the detail for the next few days a little later on.
Next, as we head into bonfire season to attempt to try to stop an alarming rise in attacks on the emergency services.
The Bradford City Community Foundation today joined West Yorkshire Police and fire officers to launch this year's bonfire safety message. It's after the number of emergency workers being pelted with fireworks hit a worrying record last year.
It's hoped through the club the warnings can reach a wider audience, as Michael Billington reports.
Withdraw from this area. Fireworks weaponised against the very people sent to protect us. A rising trend nationwide where last year the number of attacks on firefighters hit a 10-year high. In Bradford, crews have been assaulted, stoned and even threatened with weapons.
I've been on fire engines in the past that have come under attack from fireworks, stones, bricks type of thing.
District Commander Benji Bush knows the dangers to everyone.
Our colleagues in Yorkshire Ambulance Service are dealing with some horrific burns and unfortunately some of these have even turned into fatalities.
West Yorkshire Fire Service were called to over 400 incidents at bonfires in Bradford alone last year. Across the county, more than a third of them ended in injury. While dealing with incidents, West Yorkshire Fire staff have come under attack 72 times in the last 5 years. This was the aftermath of what was described as a terrifying night in Halifax last year. Fireworks hurled at homes, cars and police. A 17-year-old boy died after accidentally injuring himself as he fled the chaos. 28 people were arrested. Now detectives have released the images of dozens more they want to speak to. The force says it doesn't want a repeat of those scenes again this year.
We will work with partners to follow through with things like youth antisocial behaviour panels. So there's a whole range of things that we can do to challenge and improve people's behaviours. But people have to take responsibility for themselves and each other. But where people do break the law, we'll take the appropriate action.
Now the emergency services have teamed up with Bradford City Community Foundation to spread the safety message further.
Even near the ground, we have a lot of fireworks going off every day, and we understand there's a real issue that we've got to tackle. Unfortunately, there are a lot of wards in Bradford that are some of the most deprived in the UK, and we're not just pinpointing certain places. It's about bringing the whole of Bradford together as one big community so that everybody stays safe.
The foundation is targeting schools and mosques in some of the areas considered most at risk of fireworks violence and injury to spread the simple warning, don't leave yourself scarred for life this bonfire night. Michael Billington, ITV News in Bradford.
OK, time for some sport now. And FA Cup fever grips Works Up.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
Chris is with us in the studio. Good evening.
Good evening.
So it's time then for the lower league football clubs, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
To be in the spotlight.
It is after the international break. I'm sure many of them will argue it's about time too. We're going to start with the FA Cup, and Worksop Town of the Northern Premier Division are celebrating reaching round one for the first time in 22 years. Worksop beat Boston United from the division above by 3-2 in the fourth and final qualifying round. The winner scored from the penalty spot by former Scunthorpe player Terry Hawkridge. Their reward is a trip to League Two table toppers Stockport in the first round. Elsewhere, Chesterfield will host League One leaders Portsmouth in round one after thrashing Kettering. And both Scarborough and Whitby are in the hat for the first round, but both will have to come through replays. Scarborough surrendered a 2-goal lead to draw with Oxford City. On to league matters now, and Kevin McDonald has been back to land the Bradford City job on a permanent basis by Saturday's match winner Emmanuel Osadebe. His second half strike was enough to beat Wimbledon and make it 3 wins from 3 games since McDonald stepped into the breach following Mark Hughes' sacking. Meanwhile, Mansfield Town remain unbeaten in League Two after a 4-1 thrashing of Notts County, who were top of the table. Doncaster 2 were 4-1 winners, Joe Ironside with 2 of their goals against Sutton. And Harrogate were beaten at home by Stockport, I should say.
Who?
Yeah,
what?
sorry about that. I thought there was a team there.
Well, that's the football you'll be pleased to hear.
And the Sheffield Steelers continued their impressive start to the new ice hockey season with a 3-0 win over Dundee at the arena yesterday. And the home comforts continue for the Sheffield Sharks, who racked up a second win at the new Cannon Medical Basketball Arena. They beat Caledonia Gladiators 96-78. And finally from me, former world #1 squash player Nick Matthew from Sheffield says the decision to include squash in the Olympics is long overdue. Nick, who won gold medals at the 2010 and 2014 Commonwealth Games, championed Olympic recognition for his sport for years and believes squash will be the perfect fit for the Los Angeles Games in 2028.
We've campaigned for it ever since 2005. I remember, we were very, very close to getting in London 2012, and that would have been sort of at the prime of my own career, so that was a personal disappointment. But this time around, it did actually come out of the blue. It was almost like, squash had perhaps thought, oh, maybe we've missed our calling. So, it was fantastic news when we got the final confirmation today, which has been brilliant.
Covered that story quite a lot over the years. I'm really pleased for Nick. It's just a shame, isn't it, that his days are gone now, and he and his great rival James Willstrop from Pontefract as well will never get the chance to compete at the Olympics. But brilliant for the sport and those who come after him.
Yeah, tough old game, isn't it?
It is a tough old game. Have you played it? Do you play it?
I'd keel over if I tried that.
So too, I would as well, Nick. Yeah, I would as well.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, almost 200 children, including youngsters from our region, have set off for the journey of a lifetime, an all-expenses trip to the theme parks of Florida. They're all children with a serious illness or disability and have been invited on the 10-day break by the Dreamflight charity.
Well, what makes their stay extra special is the fact they'll be away without parents or family members. Instead, they'll be looked after by an army of volunteers. Kevin Ashford saw them leave.
What is that?
The excitement has been building for months. Almost 200 children with serious illnesses and disabilities from around the country have been invited on the trip of a lifetime to the theme parks of Florida. The 10 days of fun began with a pre-flight party. The children are divided into groups. Youngsters from Yorkshire are in one called Dolphins, among them 14-year-old Cornwall from Bradford, who couldn't believe it when the letter arrived telling her she was on the trip.
I was confused at first because I couldn't read the writing, and then I read it, and then I just felt something. I just felt so excited. I had so many questions. I wouldn't stop asking questions.
Helping the children on their way were long-time supporters of the Dreamflight charity, DJs Dick and Dom.
To see 200 kids being taken out to Orlando and having the best time of their lives ever, it's just an amazing thing to watch.
But we're always there to kind of, raise the spirits and make it exciting, because it's quite an intimidating, or not intimidating, daunting experience for them. A lot of them have never been apart from their parents before and have been through really tricky periods of their lives. And our job is to kind of let them know it's all going to be okay, and that we come to this year after year and they're going to have the best time ever.
Well, the big day has finally arrived. The children are getting on the plane to Florida. They're not going to be alone while they're out there. There's a whole army of around 200 people who are going to be looking after them every single step of the way to ensure they have a trip they'll never forget. This is the 35th annual Dreamflight trip to Florida. The charity was the brainchild of Patricia Pearce. What do you think the kids get out of it?
It's something I never thought of initially. I just thought, let's give them a fabulous holiday and break. But they come back with so much more confidence, and they see possibly a child who's worse off than them, and they can do it, then I can do it.
For many of these youngsters, just being on a plane is a new adventure. It'll be the first of many over the next 10 days. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
What a fabulous experience for them.
And I hope they have a lovely time out there.
Absolutely. Oh, it's a bit frosty, isn't it, in the mornings now, Kerry?
Yeah, well, I promised it on Friday, didn't I, that it was all changed. We were going to get the clear skies and the cold conditions, and we did actually have over the weekend, both last night and the night before, our first widespread frost event, I suppose. So towns and cities got a little bit higher, 2s and 3s, but still low enough for a touch of grass frost. But yes, it was Topcliffe at -1 last night and -2 the night before. But of course, with the cold and clear conditions, we had a lovely dose of sunshine. So this was Damflask in Sheffield. A big thank you to Rebecca Barlow. We did have a bit of a northwesterly breeze though, and it was quite choppy out towards the coast, especially during high tide. A big thank you to Kerry Parton for sharing this shot. And today, although promised a dry day and lighter winds, we had quite a lot of that very high cirrus cloud, the ice crystals in that cirrus cloud, creating what some of you have been calling a milky sun or a silvery sun. A big thank you to Jane Hume for this one. You can just about make out the halo around that sun, and so do keep those photos coming. Weather photos at itv.com. So everything a little bit calm before the storm today, because we have got a change on the way by the end of the week.
Change for the worse or change for the better?
Yeah, change for the worse, unfortunately. Already, the Met Office have issued our second named storm of the season. A reminder that we are a trio. So we've got the Dutch, the Irish and us, our Met Office, that decide the names and decide to name a storm. And it is our Met Office that have named the storm Babette, that's coming through from the very latter part of Wednesday into the second half of the week. So here's Babette to the southwest. We've had high pressure just holding on today and probably tomorrow, but it's sweeping its way in from the southwest. And actually, we've got a couple of secondary lows by the time we reach the second half of the week, and that's going to give us a southeasterly, so quite a different story. And we do think, and there's still a bit of a question mark about where in the region, there will be some very wet weather, so potentially 80+ millimetres as we head through into Thursday, Friday. That's in 48 hours, over a month's worth. Could be locally disruptive, there could be some gales. I will keep you posted over the next few days, but in the meantime, here's your forecast.
good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Yes, the weather is definitely keeping us on our toes at the moment. It's amazing how quickly those autumn colours are changing, and amazing how quickly the weather can change from the start of the week, dry and clear conditions, to some wet and windy ones by the time you reach the end of the week. In between though, nothing too bad. A slow transition for Tuesday and Wednesday, mainly dry, bright but pretty blustery. And today we did have a little bit of cloud cover for the middle part of the day, but it did stay dry, and this thicker cloud staying to the southwest, at least for most of us, for much of the night. So as we head into the next couple of hours, under the clearer spells, especially for the Dales, parts of North Yorkshire, there could be a frost again into the early hours, maybe even with some mist and fog patches, but a little bit more cloud nudging in from the south, so keeping those temperatures a little higher, and potentially a coastal shower out towards parts of East Yorkshire by the time we reach dawn. So it's a mostly dry start as we head into tomorrow. Fresh enough, certainly. 7:37 and 6:06 are your sun times. And for much of the day, it should stay dry. There will be some cloud coming and going, bright perhaps rather than sunny, but dry and breezy, and actually quite gusty, those winds by the second half of the day, and could be gusts in excess of 25-30 miles an hour in exposure for the coasts and the hills, and temperatures hovering around freezing. Now, as we head into Wednesday, a dry start. The winds will be a little bit stronger, and then you can see the system starting to develop from the southwest, and that's going to push through into the early hours of Thursday morning. So a cloudy and a wet and a windy start as we head into the early part of Thursday, and then a really messy picture Friday into Saturday. Further weather fronts, strong winds at times, especially at the coast, and further spells of rain.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
There you go, make the most of tomorrow if you can.
Will do. You know, we were just talking about naming the storm. What would you name a storm?
Oh, I don't know. Lara.
No, Pickles, after your cat.
Oh yeah, Pickles, that's it. That's it. Have a good evening, won't you? We'll see you again tomorrow at 6. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.